It is just before dawn on the 1st of September, 1939. In the harbor of Danzig, an old German battleship sits at anchor, her guns trained on a sliver of Polish land barely a few hundred meters away. Her name is the Schleswig-Holstein. She has come, the Germans say, on a courtesy visit. A short way off, on a wooded spit of land called Westerplatte, fewer than 200 Polish soldiers are sleeping. They have one old fort, a handful of machine guns, and orders to hold for 12 hours. Far to the south, in a small town called Wielun, a town with no garrison, no factories, nothing a war could possibly want, a family sleeps under the last warm dark of summer. None of them know that the most destructive war in human history is about to begin, and that it is going to begin with them. At 4:40 in the morning, the bombs will fall on Wielun. 5 minutes later, the guns of the Schleswig-Holstein will open fire on Westerplatte. In the space of those 5 minutes, the world will change forever. This is how the Second World War began. To understand that dawn, you have to go back through a summer of lies. For months, Adolf Hitler had been building his case to destroy Poland. His pretext was Danzig, a German-speaking port cut off from the Reich by a strip of Polish land called the Corridor. He demanded its return. What he actually wanted was the country itself. But Hitler had a problem to the east, and in August 1939 he solved it with a handshake that stunned the world. In Moscow, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, sworn ideological enemies, signed a pact of non-aggression. Their foreign ministers, Joachim Ribbentrop and Vyacheslav Molotov, put their names to it as Joseph Stalin looked on. And in a secret protocol the world would not see for years, the two dictators quietly carved up Poland and half of Eastern Europe between them. Poland was now surrounded on 3 sides, with no idea that the fourth had already been bargained away. All Hitler needed was an excuse, so he manufactured one. On the night of August 31st, SS men in Polish uniforms staged a fake attack on a German radio station at Gleiwitz, leaving behind a murdered prisoner dressed as a Polish soldier to serve as a corpse for the cameras. The lie was crude. It didn't matter. By morning, Germany would claim it had been attacked, and the tanks were already rolling. What fell on Poland that morning was a new kind of war. The Germans called it Blitzkrieg, the lightning war. Instead of the slow, grinding trench lines of the last great conflict, this was speed and shock. Fast columns of tanks punching deep through the front, while overhead the Luftwaffe owned the sky. At its sharp end screamed the Stuka dive bomber, fitted with sirens for no reason but terror, falling out of the clouds onto columns, bridges, and towns. It began with Wielun. In the first minutes of the war, German bombers reduced that undefended town to rubble, killing hundreds of civilians in their beds. It was the sign of everything to come, a war that would not spare the helpless. Across the frontier poured nearly 1.5 million German soldiers in 2 enormous pincers. In the north, Army Group North under General Fedor Bock drove out of Pomerania and East Prussia. In the south, the heavier Army Group South under General Gerd Rundstedt, with the massed tanks of Heinz Guderian among its spearheads, smashed up out of Silesia and Slovakia. Their goal was simple and merciless: to encircle and destroy the Polish army in the field before it could fall back, then close the jaws around Warsaw. Poland had spent 20 years preparing to fight a war. They had never imagined one fought like this. They were supposed to hold for 12 hours. On Westerplatte, Major Henryk Sucharski and his garrison of just over 200 men faced battleship guns, dive bombers, and wave after wave of German assault. They had been asked to delay the enemy for half a day. They held for 7. For a week, that tiny wooded peninsula refused to fall, beating back attack after attack, until the Germans, astonished, began to wonder how many men were really dug in there. In the city of Danzig itself, the Polish post office became a fortress. Its clerks and postmen, civilians, took up rifles and held their building for some 15 hours against artillery and flamethrowers before they were overwhelmed. Many of the survivors were later shot. All along the frontier, the same story repeated. Outgunned and outflanked, ordinary Polish soldiers fought with a stubborn courage that surprised everyone who faced it. But courage could not stop the panzers. While Westerplatte clung to its scrap of shoreline, the great German pincers were already curling deep behind it, and the real catastrophe was unfolding across the whole of Poland at once. Poland never had a chance to fight the war on equal terms. Her army was brave, but it was smaller, slower, and a generation behind, built around marching infantry and horse cavalry, with too few tanks and an air force largely wrecked in the opening days. And she had made a fatal choice: to defend everywhere at once, stringing her armies in a thin cordon along the entire frontier, exactly where the German pincers could slice them off and surround them. It is here that one of the war's most enduring legends was born. On the very first day, near a village called Kryanty, Polish lancers caught German infantry resting in the open and scattered them in a classic cavalry charge. When German armored cars arrived, the horsemen pulled back, but enemy propaganda seized on the story and twisted it into a myth of foolish Poles charging tanks with lances and sabers. It never happened that way. The Polish cavalry were skilled, fast-moving troops who fought hard and well throughout the campaign. But the myth endured because it captured something true about the whole war: a proud, older world being ridden down by a faster, colder machine. The line along the border was already breaking apart, and behind it the Polish High Command was about to gamble everything on a single desperate counterattack. As the German armies raced east toward Warsaw, they left a flank hanging open, and a Polish general saw his chance. His name was Tadeusz Kutreba. Gathering the still intact armies of Poznan and Pomorze, he wheeled them south and struck the Germans hard along the river Bzura, west of the capital. For a few days it worked. The Poles threw the enemy back and inflicted real losses in what swelled into the largest battle of the entire campaign. But the Blitzkrieg had an answer. The Germans broke off their lunge at Warsaw, turned their forces around, and concentrated the full weight of the Luftwaffe over the Bzura. Wave after wave of bombers fell on the Polish armies, caught in the open with their backs to the rivers. The counterattack was crushed, and with it died Poland's last hope of holding a line in the field. It was the whole campaign in miniature, a brave, well-led blow that in an older war might have changed everything, and that was broken in days by aircraft and armor. After the Bzura, there was no front anymore. There were only pockets, surrounded armies, besieged cities, and an open road to the capital. And then, with Poland already reeling, came the blow from behind. Poland had not expected to fight alone. She had alliances with Britain and with France, and on September 3rd, those promises were kept, at least on paper. Britain and France declared war on Germany. In Warsaw, under the bombs, people wept and cheered outside the British embassy. Help surely was on its way. It never came. In the West, the French and British armies sat behind their fortifications and did almost nothing. A long silence history would come to call the phony war. Poland was left to bleed alone, waiting for an offensive that was never launched. And then, in the pre-dawn dark of September 17th, the second jaw of the trap snapped shut. The Russian army crossed Poland's eastern border, over 500,000 Soviet soldiers, soon many more, pouring in from the east. This was the secret